Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and welcome to Hill Auditorium. Tonight, you are joining us for our inaugural event, Service Above Self, honoring our veterans. We are very fortunate tonight to welcome distinguished guests of honor to share their thoughts with you on this Veterans Day 2015. It's my pleasure to welcome the Honorable Debbie Dingell, representing Michigan's 12th Congressional District. Our next special guest is Lieutenant Governor of the State of Michigan, Brian Calley.
It's our honor tonight to be together in a very nonpartisan way to salute our veterans.
Thank you so much for your service. We live in the greatest nation that the world has ever known.
Our next storyteller tonight is Korean War veteran Robert Fletcher, better known as Fletch. He served in the last all-black Army regiment. It was so cold in the winter of 1950 that the unit's radios froze, and they did not get the message to fall back, leaving them stranded and without support on the mountain. Fletch was captured during a massive surprise attack as the Red Chinese entered the Korean War and was then held prisoner for nearly 3 years. He is a member of the Congressional Advisory Board for ex-POWs and is the past national commander for the American ex-POWs. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Fletcher.
Thank you very much. I see some friendly faces of people that know me for quite a while. I was 17 when I left school. I had about a half a semester to finish high school, but I figured I knew more than the teachers, so I quit. And my mother cried and said the biggest mistake you'll ever make was not finishing school. Well, back then, you're a man at 17, and mothers have told you what to do for 17 years, and you want to be on your own. I went in the service in May 1st, 1950. I had 4 to 5 weeks of basic training, no combat training. I then was signed to the Buffalo Soldiers, the last of the Buffalo Soldiers in Japan. I went to Japan. I was there about 2 weeks, or maybe 3. And one night, we were called back to base, and we're told we had to go to Korea. And just about every single one of us said, "Where is Korea?" And the commander said, "Across the pond." Well, we loaded onto fishing boats. We didn't even have any LPVs or LSTs. We loaded onto Japanese fishing boats down in the hull and went to Korea. And please believe me, that is one of the worst smells you've ever want to get involved into. We landed in Busan. Then from Busan, we went all the way up to Seoul. And that's when we met the North Koreans. And we are thinking police action, nightsticks, no heavy combat. Well, they pushed us back to a little town called Yecheon, which is a fork off the main road, and we were told to hold at all costs. When we left, the mountain on the left, which we call hills, we call all mountains hills in Korea, because that's all there was. There were 39 of us still alive out of 250. We shoved down south, and we got back down to Busan. General MacArthur said, "Gentlemen, you've made your last strategic withdrawal. Now you'll fight to the last man." And I looked at the platoon sergeant, and I said, "Well, we don't have many men. What the heck are we going to do?" He said, "We're going to fight." We got some replacements while we were there, and we fought. We made a maneuver. It's called left to right, if you've been in the military. And it was so successful, the Army used it up until a few years ago. That's where you strike the enemy to the left, pull back, go to your right, and come back around to your left. And when we did, they were paralyzed. They didn't know what to do. And by then, they had about a regiment or more down in a draw, and we totally wiped them out. That was the 5th, 6th, and 7th Regiment, North Koreans. They never were able to regroup. These are things that the press would not tell people back here because we were all black and we couldn't get the uppings we needed. I didn't know this. I thought the press was giving us all the hypes that we had coming, but they didn't, not one. Then they got Marines were going to be landing at Incheon, and our objective was to drive north to Seoul, cut the enemy off, and then pocket them and wipe them out. Well, they put on civilian clothes, and we couldn't tell them from civilians. The South Koreans could tell them by asking them certain questions, and I'm sure it's just like a person from England or down south. They've got an accent, and that's how they would tell them. We went north, and then we got orders to pull back down south. Harry Truman said MacArthur was campaigning to become president, and he wasn't doing his job, and a bunch of other stuff, so we were pulled back down south below the parallel, and we sat there for almost a month. Then we went back north. He said, let's go up to the Yellow River, which divides China and North Korea. This was in the 1st of November. Now the evenings are getting a little crisp. And so we started saying, what about our winter clothes? They'll be in Korea, in Japan, waiting on you because you won't find any resistance. After 2 days of driving north, the lid came off. My unit and every other unit was totally surrounded. Our radios had frozen. The temperatures had dropped between 45 and 40 below zero. And you got to remember, we still got summer clothes. We fought approximately 5 days with the Chinese and ran out of ammunition, ran out of food. By this time, there was only 139 of us still alive. And then, it's amazing. The company commander said, our best survival rate will be to surrender. At least some of us might get back to the States alive. So we surrendered. Winter was then hitting us. The temperatures dropped between 50 to 55 below at night, and we always moved at night. We always stayed in bombed-out buildings. No blankets, no mattress, just the hard ground. We would go to bed at night and we'd get in a ball, like 4 or 5 of the guys on the perimeter would be frozen the next morning. And that's no joke. Our diet consisted of field corn, cracked corn, a small Asian bowl once a day. Once we got back to the camp, they brought in some other grains like millet. We never got rice till the summer of '52. But millet, sorghum cane seed, stuff of this sort that we don't even eat back here. We feed it to the canaries and to the chickens and other animals like that. But all this time of going back to that camp, walking with combat boots in icy mountains, it's like being on skis. You never know when you're going to fall. I fell and broke my ankle. I tightened my combat boot up, and I didn't realize I had broken my ankle. Because the Chinese would say, leave the sick, we'll bring them up, but you never saw them. So we got to where we had put the sick in the middle, and everybody took a turn helping. And if the Chinese found out, they would make you leave them, but you never saw them again. So we would cover it up the best way we knew how. Actually, the summer of '52 was the best summer in prison camp because they brought us new uniforms with cotton, shoes. Some of us, our combat boots were wore out. You're walking actually almost barefooted. Well, after the war was over and I came home, out of that 139 that was captured, only 39 of us survived it. Out of that 39 today, there are 4 of us left alive. Because they're, I guess, like I am, and I'm more fortunate than others, that my wife keeps a good eye on me, and when I start to get sick to the VA hospital, we go. And if they don't have a wife who is that way, then they get too sick, and then the VA can't do them any good. I came home. People say, well, the Vietnam veterans and the Iraqi veterans are the homeless. Well, people, that is bull. I came home from Korea and I couldn't stand to be in a house. I don't know why. I slept in my car. I ate whatever I could find. I was lost because I didn't know who I was. I was 20 years old and acting like I was 17. Who am I? People who have never been incarcerated for any long length of time, you know who you are. But if you get to be in a concentration camp or prison camp or in jail for a long, long, long period, you lose that. Especially when you're young, because you don't know who you are anyway. I slept in my car. One day my mother showed up and she says, why haven't you been home in 3 weeks? I looked at her and I looked down. She says, I taught you better than that. Don't look down, look at me. I said, I don't know. She said, well, you're coming home now. Those walls, that house had something, I don't know what it was. Then I met my wife many years later. We got married and I was working every day, and we raised a family together. 3 girls, a boy, and then we adopted another boy. And she kept saying, you're like Jekyll and Hyde. What is wrong with you? I didn't know. I thought I was normal. She said, you scream at us, and then 2 minutes later, it's, come on, let's go to the Dairy Queen. And I couldn't find any bearings for it. And then one day she came home and she says, you know, the VA's got a post-traumatic stress program they're starting. I said, well, if you need to go, because I don't need it. She said, well, I thought maybe we'd go together. Now, knowing my wife, she's very, very persistent, but she does a bit at a time. She doesn't grab it by the whole, a bit at a time. So I started going. Well, I didn't start going. I was on a fishing trip with a friend up in Lansing, and on my way home, I got lost. Mentally, I got lost. And I stopped along the highway, and I looked in my glove box. And I said, you know what, to myself, if I had a gun, I'd kill myself. I can't take this. When I got home, I walked in the house. The wife looked at me and says, what is wrong? I said, you know, if I had a gun, I'd kill myself. Why? And I said, I don't know. Well, she talked me into going over to the VA the next day, and with Wayne Byram, who works there. And it's been 15 years I've been seeing a psychiatrist there at the VA. It's made a different person out of me. I now think clear. I still sometimes get those, I don't know what you call them. A couple times I've snapped at her and she says, why? And I catch myself. I don't like that, but it just, I don't know what it is. It's there. Really, we have a farm, 16-acre farm, and it's been a good life for both of us and the kids. I would go back to Korea if another war started and I was young. Because the one thing I've learned, freedom is not free. Somebody's got to pay for it, either there or we'll pay for it here. And I hear people say, oh, the ISIS. Well, don't do anything, and we'll be fighting right here in this country, believe me. And I thank you very much for your time.